The 2022 Minnesota Fighting Vikings defense was just an unmitigated disaster. Yes, made some great plays at the end of games, but overall, it was just soft. It was marshmallowy, and the defense was the reason why the Vikings lost in the wildcard round against Daniel Jones and the Giants, is what it is. But someone who greatly benefited from the scheme change was Patrick Peterson. Had himself a career renaissance, 5 interceptions, did some great things, second team PFF All-Pro, did some good things. And defense coordinator Ed Donatel bringing over Fangio Light, all that stuff. It didn't work out great, but like I said, for P Squared, worked out fantastic. And on his podcast, All Things Covered Except for Isaiah Hodgins, he actually defended Ed Donatel as well as the scheme, and was a little bit surprised that Donatel was shown the door this offseason. And our guy Will Raggets assembled some of the quotes, did a fantastic job here, so running through. Donatel scheme, blah, 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 blah. Here's Peterson. I was shocked to see that they moved on from Coach Ed, blah, blah, blah. But like we all know how the business goes, if they feel like you're not holding up to the standard that they're holding you to, changes are going to be made. It's unfortunate. Is that you, Rona? It's unfortunate that they had to make change just after 1 year. Coach Ed is such a great human being, has a great connection with the players. I just love the way he communicates with his players. Peterson joined the Vikings, blah, 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 blah. Despite the strong play of Peterson and a few others, the Vikings defense as a whole was a massive disappointment, ranking 28th in points allowed, 31st in yards allowed, and 27th in DVOA. It's like, oh, hey, if you're not living up to the standard, you got to go. All right, so what was the standard? Being, I don't know, top 20 in yards and points in DVOA? Like, is that the goal? Come on, man. Come on. I love the scheme, Peterson said. Just unfortunate that we didn't perform better because it's proven that the scheme works. The scheme is phenomenal. The proof is in the pudding. And he's right. Like, Leslie Frazier's cover 2, Tampa 2 defense didn't work here, but it works in Tampa Bay when you're able to crush it with 4, and you got Warren Sapp in the middle. And also, you got John Lynch and Rondé Barber in the secondary, and you got freaking Derek Brooks at linebacker. That seems to work. That seems to work. But with the Vikings, with Asher Allen, not so much. Blah, blah, blah. That's when co-host Brian McFadden interjected, asked the big question: if the scheme is so great, why didn't it work? Peterson's answer focused on the pass rush. Our scheme is based off of getting pressure with our front 4. And once teams started realizing that we had 2 really good guys off the edge, if you go back and look, the first 8 games, we was getting off on the quarterback. We wasn't blitzing at all. Yeah, we were giving up chunks because we were in much more of the zone defense eyes, for the most part, but they was just normally 5-0 protecting us, meaning if it was their 5 guys versus our 4 guys. So 5-0, 5 offensive linemen, blah, blah, blah. Once they started seeing Za'Darius was having monster games, 2 sack games, 3 sack games, just going crazy, at that point of the season, they started coming out in those thumper and chipper sets, meaning putting an H-back closer to the tackles to kind of detour our pass rushers to give the quarterback that much more time. When you pretty much play in a zone and your pass rush is not getting there, receivers are going to find those open areas to make plays. I think once teams started getting in those max protection looks, it was harder for us to kind of change our identity on the back end. I just think that when we wasn't getting as much pressure as we needed to. So I'm not saying that he necessarily called out the pass rush, but it is more as like, hey, we as a secondary, we didn't adjust after offenses adjusted to getting on Za'Darius, getting on Danielle Hunter, even though Danielle had a great back end of the season. So, I mean, it's always a chicken or the egg thing, even though eggs are $5,000 nowadays. But what makes what better? A good secondary allowing more time for the pass rush to get home, or a pass rush that gets home like that and making it so that the secondary doesn't have to cover so long. I think it's one hand washes the other. But, I mean, he's correct in that the scheme is predicated on getting pressure with 4, dropping 7 in coverage, and sitting in that soft zone. But when you're not getting home with 4, like we said, if you're not getting home with 4, send some more. It's just target practice out there, where even some of the worst quarterbacks in the league, if they're protected and they know that you're going to be sitting in very familiar zones, whether it's cover 3 or quarters or whatever, they'll pick you apart. And even the worst receivers in the league will be able to read his own defense, especially if you don't really change things up. And the Vikings, to a fault, I mean, they're just sitting in those zones. And when the pass rush dried up and they weren't getting any interior pass rush per se, it was really easy. And that's what frustrated us about Donatel, is that he didn't make any adjustments after offenses adjusted to the defense. They were just sort of like, whatever happens, happens. And like I said, respect. I mean, the defense at the end of games made some big-time plays. Peterson against the Bills, Beasley against the Jets, Dantzler against the Bears, just to name a few. But there wasn't enough adjustments. There simply was not enough adjustments, and I know that P Squared, he's a loyal guy. He wants to go to bat for him, and he's not just saying that because he had a phenomenal season in Donatel's defense, but changes had to be made. And I think if the Vikings had made a couple switches, whether it's going to Peterson mid-season, making sure that they're more aggressive, having the corners play more press man as opposed to being 8-9 yards off the ball and sitting in soft zone, and just letting quarterback have target practice like it's playing freaking 7-on-7 because we weren't getting pressure, there's issues. There's lots of issues there. So Donatel had to go. The scheme needs to be overhauled. I know that Patrick Peterson says that he wants to be back. I don't know. Like, I know that he had a mini career renaissance, probably his best season in his last 5 or 6. But if the Vikings want to get younger, faster, more aggressive on defense, is Patrick Peterson back to playing more man-to-man? Like, is that going to be the answer? Or bringing Patrick Peterson back at free safety? I would certainly be fine with that. But we'll see what happens. And again, you know, a lot of people read it as he just completely threw the pass rush under the bus. I don't think that he necessarily did. I think it just sort of is what it is. But yeah, like the problems were self-evident, and Patrick Peterson is just completely outlining like what all of us fans and all the pundits were talking about all season, is that you weren't getting pressure. The secondary was getting carved up. Also, the secondary couldn't cover anyone with a freaking fire blanket. So it's just rough all the way around. But yeah, this needed to be made, and we'll see what happens with Patrick Peterson this offseason. But your thoughts are thoughts. Patrick Peterson defends Donatel in the 2022 scheme. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skull Production Value.